what the Dalai Lama taught about suffering, the mind, and inner peace. Perhaps the greatest lie we've ever been told about happiness is this: you'll be happy when everything is figured out. When life is under control, when the pain stops, when you finally arrive. But what if I told you that this promise is precisely what keeps us farthest from happiness? What if the obsessive pursuit of a life without suffering is quietly creating even more suffering within us? We live in an age where we have access to everything except ourselves. The mind never rests, emotions fluctuate, and a sense of emptiness appears even when, theoretically, everything is fine. It's at this point that the art of happiness, through the words of the Dalai Lama and the attentive listening of Howard Cutler, challenges us in a nearly unsettling way. Happiness doesn't depend on the world changing, it depends on changing the way you relate to the world. That may sound too simple to be true, but that's exactly where its depth lies. Happiness, according to this view, is not constant euphoria, nor an escape from pain. It arises from training the mind, from mindfulness, from compassion, from how we deal with the inevitable suffering of life. It's not about eliminating difficult emotions, but about developing emotional awareness so we are not enslaved by them. Throughout this content, I want to walk with you through a rarely explored territory, that of possible, imperfect, and deeply human happiness. We'll talk about suffering without romanticizing it, about emotions without repressing them, about spirituality without escapism. All of this through practical examples, intimate reflections, and teachings that can be lived day by day, right now, exactly as your life is. If you feel that you've tried everything on the outside, maybe it's time to look inward. Not to fix yourself, but to understand yourself. Because the true art of happiness is not about changing who you are. It's about learning to inhabit your own life with greater presence, clarity, and meaning. The purpose of life, the pursuit of happiness. When I look at life with a bit more inner silence, I notice something simple and, at the same time, profound. Everything we do, at its core, is in the name of happiness. That's what The Art of Happiness, by the Dalai Lama in dialogue with Howard Cutler, makes clear right from the start. It doesn't matter whether a person is wealthy or simple, spiritual or skeptical, young or old, everyone wants to feel good inside. Sometimes we lose our way, confuse means with ends, but the purpose remains there, pulsing. I've caught myself believing that happiness was always just a little further ahead. When I achieved something, when I solved a certain problem, when I was recognized. It's funny how the mind creates these invisible contracts with the future. The Dalai Lama invites us to question this gently, almost as if smiling and asking, what if you could begin now? It's not naivete, it's perspective. A subtle shift in the way we look can completely transform our experience of life. What's most beautiful is realizing that this pursuit doesn't depend on religion, dogma, or any specific belief. Happiness, according to this view, arises from inner states such as mindfulness, gratitude, and emotional awareness. Have you noticed how a simple moment, a warm cup of coffee, an honest conversation, a sunset, can soothe the emotions? That's no coincidence. It's perception training. It's learning to inhabit the present with more presence and less hurry. In practice, this begins with honest questions. I often suggest something simple. At the end of the day, ask yourself where you felt most alive. Not where you gained the most, but where you felt peace, connection, or meaning. Writing down these answers creates a powerful inner map. Books like The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh are incredibly helpful in this process, as are small moments of conscious pause throughout the day, even if they last just 1 minute. And perhaps the most provocative point is this: what if happiness were not a reward, but a skill? If that's the case, everything changes. The search stops being external and begins to turn inward, toward how we deal with thoughts, choices, and reactions. This understanding quietly opens a door to something greater. The idea that happiness can be cultivated, trained, and deepened step by step within the mind itself. Happiness as mental training. When I understood that happiness could be trained, something inside me relaxed. It was no longer a race against the world, but an internal, patient, almost handcrafted process. In The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama, guided by Howard Cutler's clinical listening, makes it clear that it's not external events that determine our well-being, but rather how the mind interprets and responds to them. This changes everything because it places power back in our hands. Most of us were taught to react automatically. Something happens, an emotion arises, and that's it, we're on autopilot. But happiness, in this view, emerges when we create a small space between stimulus and response. That space is made of mindfulness, of conscious presence. I like to think of it as learning to hold the steering wheel of your own mind, instead of being dragged by it through dangerous curves. Training the mind isn't mystical or distant. It's extremely practical. For example, when a recurring negative thought appears, instead of fighting it, you can observe it the way you'd watch a cloud pass by. Ah, there's that fear again, without judgment. This simple shift already strengthens emotional awareness and reduces the impact of suffering. That's where meditation comes in, as a tool, not an escape but a form of intimacy with yourself. One simple practice I recommend is setting aside 5 minutes a day to sit in silence and observe your breath. No trying to empty the mind, that only creates frustration. Just observe. Over time, you begin to notice emotional patterns, triggers, and reactions. Books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle help deepen this experience and clarify how the present moment is the only place where happiness can exist. And the more the mind becomes trained, the clearer a subtle truth becomes. We don't control everything that happens, but we can learn to choose how we relate to what happens. This quiet training prepares the ground for something inevitable in human life, the encounter with suffering, and perhaps it's precisely there that the true art begins to reveal itself. Understanding human suffering. At some point in life, we realize that suffering is not a wrong turn but part of the path itself. It took me a long time to accept that. I spent years trying to avoid pain as if it were a sign of personal failure. In The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama invites us to look at suffering with more honesty and less resistance, understanding that it is part of the human experience, regardless of who we are or what we have achieved. The problem is not feeling pain but the way the mind clings to it. When we resist, deny, or dramatize it, suffering multiplies. Have you noticed how emotional pain, when ruminated on, seems to have no end? The book shows that acceptance is not resignation, but recognizing what is happening right now. From this recognition, a new perspective is born. More mature, more realistic, and curiously lighter. I learned in practice that observing pain with mindfulness changes our relationship to it. In difficult moments, I tend to name what I'm feeling. This is sadness, this is fear, this is frustration. It may sound overly simple, but naming emotions reduces inner chaos. This practice, widely used in contemporary psychology, resonates deeply with the spirituality proposed by the Dalai Lama. Awareness before reaction. There is also a powerful teaching about purpose hidden within suffering. Often, it is pain that makes us more human, more empathetic, more capable of compassion. People who have never suffered tend to judge easily. Those who have gone through loss, rejection, or crisis, on the other hand, often develop a rare sensitivity. When understood, suffering can transform into a bridge to others. And perhaps the most liberating point is realizing that suffering does not define us. It passes, changes form, transforms, just like everything in life. This understanding begins to open space for a more conscious view of our emotional reactions, preparing the ground to distinguish what destroys us from within from what can, in fact, strengthen us. Destructive emotions and healthy emotions. One of the greatest shifts I experienced while reflecting on the art of happiness was realizing that it's not emotions themselves that hurt us, but the way we relate to them. The Dalai Lama, with his characteristic sensitivity, does not propose repressing feelings such as anger, fear, or envy. On the contrary, he invites us to understand them deeply, recognizing that these emotions are part of the human experience, but they do not need to govern our minds. Destructive emotions arise when we lose perspective. Anger, for example, usually stems from frustrated expectations or a perceived threat to the ego. I've seen important decisions made in the heat of anger, and almost always regret followed. When we pause for a few seconds, breathe, and observe what's happening internally, we create space for responses that are more conscious and more aligned with the happiness we wish to cultivate. Cultivating healthy emotions doesn't happen by accident. It requires training, intention, and daily choices. Simple practices like conscious gratitude, even on difficult days, help retrain the mind's focus. A practical suggestion is to write down, every night, 3 things you're grateful for that day. They don't have to be major achievements. Sometimes simply taking a deep breath during a hard moment is enough. Meditation also plays a fundamental role in this process. By observing thoughts without identifying with them, we begin to see that emotions are passing events, not absolute truths. Books like Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman help integrate this understanding with modern psychology, showing how emotional awareness directly impacts our relationships and choices. And when we learn to distinguish emotions that constrict us from those that expand us, something quietly shifts within. The mind becomes less reactive, clearer, more stable. This emotional stability not only deepens our inner well-being, but also transforms the way we connect with others, opening space for something even more powerful: genuine compassion. Compassion and altruism as a path to well-being. For a long time, I believed that happiness was something essentially individual, almost a personal project. But the art of happiness, through the words of the Dalai Lama and the sensitive listening of Howard Cutler, dismantles that idea with elegance. True happiness, according to this view, grows when we shift our focus slightly away from ourselves and begin to include others. Compassion ceases to be merely a moral virtue and reveals itself as an intelligent strategy for emotional well-being. When we look closely, we realize that constant egocentrism is exhausting. The mind becomes tense, always comparing, competing, and defending itself. Altruism, on the other hand, creates a curious effect. When we ease someone else's suffering, something within us is eased as well. This isn't mysticism, it's psychological functioning. Modern science already shows that compassionate acts activate areas of the brain associated with pleasure and emotional safety. I like to think of compassion as a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes. And it begins with simple gestures. Listening to someone without interrupting, responding with kindness when it would be easy to react with irritation, helping without expecting recognition. A practical exercise is to consciously choose one person each day to treat with more attention and care than usual. It may seem small, but the internal impact is profound. The practice of compassion meditation, so present in Buddhism, can also be adapted to everyday life. Simply close your eyes for a few minutes and sincerely wish that you and others be free from suffering. Books like Compassion by Matthew Ricard deepen this practice and show how it transforms our relationship with our own emotions and with the world. Over time, compassion expands our perspective. We begin to realize that we are not separate from others, that our pains and joys are interconnected. This quiet recognition prepares us to understand something even more essential: the nature of human relationships and the profound interdependence that sustains our existence. Relationships, empathy, and interdependence. Over time, I came to realize that much of our happiness, and also our suffering, arises in human relationships. The art of happiness makes this very clear by showing that we are, by nature, relational beings. The Dalai Lama speaks of interdependence with disarming simplicity. No one exists alone. Everything we are has, in some way, been built through the care, work, and presence of others. When we forget this, the mind creates an illusion of separation. We begin to see others as threats, obstacles, or competitors. This narrow view generates conflict, loneliness, and a constant sense of defensiveness. Empathy, in this context, emerges as a powerful antidote. Putting ourselves in another's place doesn't mean agreeing with everything, but recognizing that, like us, they too seek happiness and try to avoid suffering. I've noticed in many personal situations that conflicts diminish when I change the internal question. Instead of, "Why is this person wrong?" I begin to ask, "What might this person be feeling?" This simple shift in perspective disarms automatic reactions and creates space for more human dialogue. Empathy doesn't solve everything, but it almost always softens the path. In practice, strengthening relationships requires mindfulness. Being present in a conversation, listening without preparing a response, making eye contact. It sounds obvious, but it's rare. A simple exercise is to choose one conversation a day to be fully present. No phone, no rushing. Books like Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg are extremely helpful in developing this conscious and empathetic listening. When we understand interdependence, something quietly changes within us. We realize that our actions have a real impact on the lives of others, and that their actions affect us as well. This understanding deepens personal responsibility and prepares the heart to deal with the impermanence of relationships, with losses, changes, and the inevitable detachments of life. Acceptance, impermanence, and non-attachment. One of the most liberating teachings I encountered in the art of happiness was a deep understanding of impermanence. Nothing remains the same, not situations, not relationships, not even the emotions that feel eternal when they arise. The Dalai Lama reminds us, with serenity, that much of our suffering is born from resistance to change. The mind clings to what was, to what is, or to what it wishes things would be. Non-attachment is often misunderstood, as if it meant indifference or emotional coldness. But it is nothing of the sort. Non-attachment is loving without possessing, living without trying to control. I've experienced firsthand how trying to hold on to people, outcomes, or identities generates anxiety. When we accept that everything is in motion, something within us relaxes. Life flows with less friction, and happiness becomes more accessible. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means recognizing reality before acting. Mindfulness helps greatly in this process because it anchors us in the present, the only place where life truly happens. A simple exercise is to notice, throughout the day, how many times you suffer not because of what is happening, but because of the story you're telling yourself about what is happening. Simply noticing this already transforms your relationship with the moment. The practice of meditating on impermanence is also powerful. Calmly reflecting on how thoughts and emotions arise and pass like waves in the ocean strengthens equanimity. Books like When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron deepen this perspective and help us move through change with greater courage and self-compassion. When non-attachment begins to take root, we develop a quiet trust in life. The mind becomes less reactive, less dependent on external outcomes. This emotional maturity prepares the ground for even more challenging practices, such as cultivating patience, practicing forgiveness, and honestly assuming personal responsibility. Inner discipline, patience, forgiveness, and personal responsibility. Over time, I came to understand that true discipline is not rigidity, it is care. In The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama speaks of patience and forgiveness not as weaknesses, but as expressions of inner strength. The undisciplined mind reacts, explodes, and accuses. The trained mind observes, understands, and chooses. This conscious choice is one of the quietest pillars of lasting happiness. Patience, for example, is much more than waiting. It is the ability to remain whole in the face of frustration. I've noticed how many conflicts could have been avoided if I had taken a few deep breaths before responding. Patience creates space for mindfulness, allowing emotion to arise without overpowering us. It's like holding a flame with a lantern instead of with bare hands. Forgiveness may be one of the most challenging and most liberating practices of all. It's not about justifying what was done, but about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. Holding on to hurt traps the mind in the past and prolongs suffering. A simple practice is to write a forgiveness letter that will never be sent, simply to acknowledge the pain and consciously decide not to carry it anymore. Personal responsibility emerges here as a point of emotional maturity. Stopping the habit of blaming the world, circumstances, or others for what we feel is a decisive step toward inner autonomy. This doesn't mean taking blame for everything, but recognizing that we can always choose how to respond. Books like The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz are especially helpful in integrating this posture into daily life. When patience, forgiveness, and responsibility come together, something inside begins to organize itself. The mind becomes more stable, the heart less defensive. This inner discipline creates fertile ground for a more conscious life, one in which spirituality stops being theory and begins to show up in the small daily choices, in how we breathe, react, and move forward. Practical spirituality and inner balance. Over time, I came to realize that spirituality has less to do with what we believe and more to do with how we live. The Art of Happiness, through the reflections of the Dalai Lama organized by Howard Cutler, shows that true spirituality reveals itself in everyday life. In how we deal with emotions, with suffering, with others, and, above all, with ourselves. It's not something separate from ordinary life. It is life itself, lived with awareness. Inner balance does not arise from the absence of problems, but from the presence of equanimity. The mind learns not to swing so wildly between euphoria and despair. I like to think of it as an inner axis. Even when everything around me is shaking, something within remains steady. This stability comes from the ongoing practice of mindfulness, observing thoughts and feelings without becoming entangled in them. Practical spirituality shows up in simple choices. How do you react when things don't go as planned? How do you treat someone who disagrees with you? How do you speak to yourself when you make a mistake? These small attitudes reveal far more about our spiritual path than lofty speeches ever could. A powerful daily exercise is to review your day at night and notice where you acted on autopilot and where you were truly conscious. Here, meditation stops being an isolated ritual and becomes a mental attitude. Breathing before responding, walking with presence, eating with gratitude. Books like The Middle Way by the Dalai Lama help us understand how to integrate spirituality and practical life, not by escaping the world, but by participating in it with greater clarity and compassion. When this integration happens, something aligns within. Happiness ceases to be a distant goal and becomes a natural consequence of a life lived with meaning. This inner balance creates the perfect setting to look back, integrate all these teachings, and realize how they translate into a real human possible story, perhaps very similar to your own. One story, one mirror, and the conscious choice of happiness. Conclusion. I want to tell you a simple yet deeply human story. Imagine an ordinary person, living an ordinary life, facing pressures, responsibilities, bills to pay, and a mind that never stops. This person, who could be me, you, or any of us, spent years believing that happiness would come once everything was sorted out. When there were no more conflicts, no more pain, no more uncertainty. Until, in the middle of a moment of quiet exhaustion, something shifted within. This person began to observe their own mind. They noticed how suffering arose less from facts and more from interpretations. Little by little, they began to practice mindfulness, to recognize emotions without identifying with them, to cultivate gratitude even on difficult days. They discovered that happiness, as taught in The Art of Happiness, is not the absence of pain, but the ability to move through it with awareness, equanimity, and compassion. Over time, relationships changed as well. By understanding interdependence, this person began to listen more, judge less, and forgive more often. Forgiveness stopped being a favor to others and became an act of personal freedom. Non-attachment brought lightness, patience brought clarity, and personal responsibility restored the power of choice. Nothing became perfect, but everything became more real. This story isn't about someone enlightened, but about someone willing to look inward, to train the mind, to choose altruism over isolation, to live a spirituality applied to real life. As the Dalai Lama and Howard Cutler remind us, happiness is a path built step by step, decision by decision, thought by thought. Now I ask you with honesty and care, what would change in your life if you began today to train your mind for happiness? What suffering could be transformed if you changed the way you look at it? What relationships could heal if you chose compassion instead of automatic reaction? If this content touched you on any level, know that this is just the beginning. Here at Conscious Soul, we walk together, with depth, awareness, and humanity. So subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this process of self-knowledge and inner growth. Happiness is not a distant destination. It begins now, in the way you choose to move forward from here.